Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by. Welcome to this year's Best and Brightest Practices webinar. If you would like to ask a question during the presentation, please use the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded Wednesday, May 23rd, 2018. I would now like to turn the conference over to Jan Hubbard. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Welcome to the Best and Brightest Elite Suite Education Series. I'm Jan Hubbard, your host, and we've had a fantastic lineup of programming for you so far this year, and we hope you've found that they've been innovative and giving you fresh ideas that you can use in your company right away. If you haven't had the opportunity to tune in to our past months, you'll find their recordings on the Best and Brightest website. So it's thebestandbrightest.com. I would be happy to provide direct links if you want to send me an email after this. As the operator instructed, you are invited to submit questions and comments in the chat feature, and we'll have some interaction during today's webinar. Jennifer's stirred things up a little for you, and we should have some fun. Feel free to chime in. Following the program today, you'll receive from me a SurveyMonkey evaluation. That will be your opportunity to apply for 1 unit of continuing education credit, and that will be the only way that you'll receive a certificate. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our CEO and President of the National Association for Business Resources, Jennifer Kluge. She is also President and CEO of the Michigan Business and Professional Association, now known as MichBusiness, and the Michigan Food and Beverage Association, and she's also the owner and publisher of Corp Magazine. Jennifer launched the NABR in 2001, and with it, the workplace engagement competition, Best and Brightest Companies to Work For. It's now running in Detroit, Grand Rapids, Chicago, Houston, San Francisco, Dallas-Fort Worth, Milwaukee, Atlanta, San Diego, and Boston, as well as a national program. She's often asked to be a speaker for HR and business leadership events, and she's received numerous awards for her achievements. Her BBA is from Michigan State, and her MBA is from Loyola in Strategic Planning and Marketing. So please allow me to introduce our President and CEO, Jennifer Kluge. Take it away.
Thank you, Jan. Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here today, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you all about the best practices. I'd like to give you a lay of the land for today. We're going to be covering some deep dives into some companies' best practices. We strategically picked several of them to help address some of the areas of concern that the data has been telling us about. And then we're going to be doing some rapid fires. Those are real quick best practices that you can borrow, steal, implement. All I ask is that you make sure it's a culture fit for your own culture, and you might need to modify some of these best practices for your own culture. So we are going to be pausing periodically through the presentation for some Q&A, but we're also going to be doing some quizzes, some little surveys to see where you all are at with some of your best practices. So make sure that you use the Q&A section of our webinar to ask those questions and to reply to the surveys. Also, I want you to think about the 1 or 2 takeaways that you have for this presentation. We're going to be sharing those at the end of what is the 1 or 2 things that you are going to implement or seek to implement from today's presentation. So let me give you a feel for the data. The data is coming from surveys of about 1,600 companies across the nation. These companies are required to fill out a very extensive survey with us, as well as their employees. So we randomly survey their employees, and the data that we get from those, it's about 450,000 employees have been surveyed. All kinds of company sizes. We have small companies, medium-sized companies, large and global enterprises, as well as all industry types. So we have manufacturing, we have service organizations, tech firms, you name it, from cities across the United States. So Jan mentioned we have 10 city competitions. We call those our regional competitions, as well as our national competition where anyone and everyone can participate across the U.S., and those are scored and ranked and analyzed. I am going to be sharing with you some of the feedback from these businesses and some of our concerns from looking at the data. So let's get started. We're going to be talking about some of our best and brightest winners that have some really interesting practices. And then we're going to be toggling back and forth between data, best practices, and some deep dives. So let's start our first deep dive. So Bright is out of New Jersey. Their CEO has identified 28 traits, and they have done a really good job with culture and recruitment. And this is driven by their president, and these 28 traits is how they do their recruiting. So one of their core principles is excellence. But excellence is subjective. So how do you measure excellence? So they worked very hard to find a recruitment process that measured their version of excellence, and they created a customized recruitment process that includes skill testing, analytical testing, meeting with the president, as well as a customized screening process of these 28 traits. Some of their recruitment sources, and we've seen this across all of the best and brightest companies, their primary source of candidates is LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, and Indeed. And that seems to be a pattern with many of our best and brightest. So some of their ways that they measure excellence, they use these catchphrases: better way, relationships, integrity, teamwork, and education as part of their definition, and they put questions and recruitment tied to their version of excellence. So that's pretty neat. The next company I want to do a deep dive on is Radio Flyer. We've only had a handful of companies that have entered the Best and Brightest program and became a best of the best winner in their particular region or in their scoring group. Radio Flyer is one of them. They're out of Chicago. You should recognize the wagon, hopefully. I'm dating myself here a little bit, but hopefully you had a red wagon growing up, or a red wagon Radio Flyer tricycle. They have done a really good job of creating their own demand. And the reason why I'm sharing some of these recruitment best practices is that the war on talent has hit even the best and brightest employers, and we're starting to see the data skew this year, and this is why I'm focusing on some of these best practices for this presentation. So Radio Flyer has created their own demand. So how did they do that? So they made themselves the Harvard of companies to get into. So they have a 10-step process, but before the 10-step process even began, they made their first mission statement to be relentless commitment to build a great team. So they have a relentless commitment to build a great team, and this is how they do it. So I'm going to go through this 10-step process. 1, they have a scorecard specific to that job of what they want to score on in the candidate process. 2, they create a customized selection team for that job posting. So it's a team of people working on that job posting, not just one person in HR. Then that team sets their sourcing strategy. Where are we going to find them? How are we going to get them? Who do we want to invite to interview? That's all discussed. Then, of course, the resumes are reviewed, and then there's a phone screening process. So after the phone screening process, then there's a customized graded interview based off of the scorecard and the selection team on what they want to interview for. And then they have a written assignment, which is a big deal. I mean, how many of us have a written assignment as part of the selection process? Now you can see where it's like the Harvard of jobs to get into. And they focus on the writing assignment on 3 successes and 1 failure. So that's a written assignment. Once they pass that written assignment, they meet with the CEO and the CHRO for an interview. Reference checks are done, and then an offer is made, and they go immediately into the onboarding process. The onboarding process lasts months with them, and it includes their university, their customized university, where they continuously train for skill set, but they also train for culture. So that is a pretty cool example and deep dive. So let's now start talking about some of these real quick little best practices that I'd like to share. There's some really cool things that people are doing. The James Hotel is also out of Chicago. They do something pretty cool. They have an internal charity. So people can take money out of their paychecks to go towards charity, but it's a company charity. So if any employee has a need, let's say there's a sick family member or a funeral cost or medical bills or child care, or they're struggling with something in life, those employees can apply for their internal charity funds. Okay, 3 Degrees is out of San Francisco. They're very involved with sustainability, as you can tell from their name. They're clean energy consultants, and they have this thing called Pivot Opportunity, where employees can pivot into any different area or job responsibility, and they can either pivot back to their original department, or they can stay in a new department with new job responsibilities. So what's good about this is it keeps what we call brain food going for the employee, and it helps with retention, because if somebody's getting stale in their position, they have some variety that they can do. So out of South Carolina, Bassware, they're a financial supply chain, e-solutions company, so they're involved in the financial e-solutions. And they do an interesting job of promoting their employees. So over 20% of their employees are promoted to new positions, but over 50% of those promoted were in their first year of employment. And overall, for all positions, 40% of employees have been promoted to an elevated role since joining the company. So that's something where they have done a really good job, and they feel it starts at the recruitment. So they do a very good job of recruiting, and then they feel it's their responsibility to promote from within for any opportunities that arise from their recruiting process. So when they're recruiting, they're thinking about how can we promote this person and what's their track going to be. Okay, this one's out of Michigan. This is Relipath. They're a customized IT solutions company. I thought this was cool. They offer a $50 bonus to any employees whose child gets straight A's in K through 12. So if you're an employee of this company and your child gets straight A's, you get a $50 bonus. And if you're really nice, you'll share it with your child. If you're not nice, you'll go buy something for yourself. All right, this next company, you should recognize the name, Virgin. They're out of Boston. They're one of Sir Richard Branson's companies. If you recall, he's one of the folks that wanted to go around the world, I think in a hot air balloon, if I remember correctly. And he's quite eccentric and well-respected in the business community. This particular company of his, Virgin Pulse, they run a monthly peer recognition program. And that allows employees to nominate an employee that embodies their core values. So we're seeing a lot of this, a lot of rewards and recognitions around core values. So what happens is an employee is nominated, the winner's selected, and then they receive a mention at the company-wide meeting. They get an awesome plaque and $300 donation to the charity of their choice. So we're seeing a lot of this. This is one example. We have hundreds of examples like this, so that's something to think about. So one of the areas that we've been measuring is financial education, and I'm going to talk more in depth about that. But CPD out of New York, they're a third-party pension plan administrator, and they're an actuarial firm. And what they do is every 3 years they bring an attorney in. And the attorney comes in and does estate planning and will updates for their employees. They also bring in a financial planner to assist their employees with any of their planning needs. We're seeing a lot of this now. We've been pushing for this because of the data that we had a couple years ago. We've seen a lot of improvements in this area, but anything like financial planning, lunch and learns, budgeting lunch and learns, how to invest lunch and learns, those are now pretty much standard. And we're really proud of what we've done there. Okay, so let's take a little quiz here, and then I'm going to open it up for questions and answers if you have any questions. So let's do the quiz first. So think about any questions that you want to send to us using the left side of your screen, bottom side of your screen. But let's do this first. On average, how often do you spend time on strategic planning for your talent needs? So we're in the middle of a talent war. How much time do you spend addressing the strategy of how you're going to solve your talent war needs versus being in your operations? So reply 1 with every 2 weeks or less. Reply 2 for once a month. Reply 3 once a quarter. And reply 4 for every 6 months or more. We'll give that a second, and we'll see how people are doing there. So again, on average, how often do you spend time on your strategic planning for your talent needs? Give that a second.
Jennifer, this is Jan. It seems like the answers are pretty far and wide. It looks like maybe 2 and 3 are neck and neck, with a couple of people saying 1 and a couple of people saying 4. But I think that's pretty good then, 2 or 3.
So let's talk about this. So what we're recommending is you need to be having a talent pipeline audit. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that. If you do not have a strategic plan for your talent, you need to be meeting every 2 weeks to develop it, and then once a quarter to maintain and ensure the actions from your strategic plan are being implemented. So very good. So thank you, everybody. All right. Any questions, Jan, or should I keep going?
I think keep going for now, and I'll watch and see. Oh, wait, got one. What are the best strategies for rewarding innovation and researching potential ideas?
So there are quite a few companies that incentivize for ideas. I have a couple best practices in this presentation. So what we like to say is anything that's measured or tracked can be rewarded. So before you put any incentive program together, make sure you have the right tracking mechanisms. Many companies do, one company here does a hackathon. Other people have some sort of formal, ongoing, active providing information or ideas, and then those rewards and incentives are applied to those. So my advice to anybody starting an incentive plan around ideas and research needs to do, they need to put some numbers to it, they need to communicate it, and they need to put the incentives behind it as well. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, so some of the concerns that we've had. So we've been monitoring a few areas based off of the data. And if you recall, there's about 450,000 employees that we've received data on. We randomly surveyed them from the 1,600 companies. So these are the areas that we are monitoring. And we're going to just tell you how they've been doing year over year and what concerns we still might have on them. So immediate supervisor, how pay increases are administered, trust and transparency of executive leadership, and financial well-being was our focus in 16 and 17. So immediate supervisor, what the issue was there, we've done very well. So just so you know, our point system, a 1-point change in the data, it gets our attention. A 2-point change in the data creates concern. Anything 3 points or more is an issue to address. So the nation overall of these companies that we surveyed, we went up 2 points. So that's good. We're improving with immediate supervisor. But the concern here is that retention, the number one reason for retention is the immediate supervisor. The affinity for the immediate supervisor, their skill set in motivating employees, and are they properly trained on how to communicate strategic initiatives, vision of the company, and how that applies to a particular individual. So there is an area that went down in the section of questions that we asked employees about their immediate supervisor, and this was a little alarming. I have the feedback I need from my supervisor to improve my performance. Our recommendation is that each and every day there should be no surprises in the workplace. If there's something good going on, that employees should know about it. If there's something not good going on, that needs to be discussed in an open way and addressed in the moment. So what we're seeing is that the supervisors need tools on how to provide effective feedback to their employees. So that's something we still need to work on. So the next one is the lowest scoring question that we ask. And keep in mind that these are the best and brightest companies. So if you're not a best and brightest company, these scores are pretty low for just an average company, because if we feel they're a little lower than we like for the best and brightest, we can assume that they're much worse for the non-best and brightest companies. So this score went from bad to not so bad, but it's still the lowest scoring area. And we asked employees, are you satisfied with the way pay increases are administered? And the answer came back very clearly, no. So what is this about? So we just heard that they need more feedback from their supervisor, but they don't like the way pay increases are administered. So just to be clear, we are not saying that you cannot tie performance to pay. We're not saying that. What we're saying is the old school 60 years and going 1 year review or quarterly review, where you sit down and go through a list of items for an employee to improve upon, and then that's tied to whether or not a person gets a pay raise or not, is not working for anybody. Supervisors don't like it. The employees don't like it. And it is not as effective as it used to be, given all the changes that we made in our workplace. So this is still work in progress. Okay, so let's talk about trust and transparency. So these are very good scores, but us as the National Association for Business Resources in scoring the best and brightest companies, we would like to see these scores even higher. So they're very good. We want them excellent. So we are encouraging a focus on this. And there was one area in this section of questions that it actually went down, and this is a little alarming. It says, I believe senior leaders care about what I have to say. Well, that is really interesting, because as a senior leader myself, I care about what every single employee needs and has. And so if there's a larger business and there's not a vehicle for the senior leaders to hear what the employees have to say, that needs to be implemented. So senior leadership, and what we've seen with some of this, is senior leaders are definitely motivated and encouraged to provide their talent with what they need, but the message is not getting across to the employees. So we need to work on that, and there's some perception issues with trust and transparency, and we'll do a deep dive on that in a little bit. All right, so something that we have seen a lot of improvement on, and you just saw the one example, financial well-being. It is the perception of employees that they want their employer to help them with their long-term financial status, 401ks, pension plans, investments, how to manage finances. The employees want that. This is an easy fix. We can do lunch and learns. Since we've been harping on this for the last couple years, we have seen a huge leap forward. This was a 6-point improvement in year-over-year data. So a lot of companies are implementing how they can help their employees be more financially solvent. All right, let's take another little quiz here. If you had unlimited budget, unlimited budget, nice. where would you primarily invest in your business? So 1 is talent recruitment. 2 is culture building. 3 is compensation and benefits. And 4 is employee engagement. So we'll give you a second again. 1 is talent recruitment. 2 is culture building. 3 is compensation and benefits. And 4 is employee engagement. I see a lot of 2s, Jan.
I do too.
Lots of 2s and
2s
4s.
are good. 4s. Yeah, not seeing many 3s. Couple 3s.
All right. So let's just take a second here. So culture trumps everything. We have heard a lot of C-suite speakers. In fact, we had a C-suite speaker at one of our programs who we asked him, if you could go back to the beginning of your career, what difference would you make? And he said, I wish I had spent more time building culture and driving culture instead of strategy. And he directly tied culture into increasing profits over strategy. So that is just a little tidbit to share with you. And we will take these answers. So we're going to log some of these answers and we'll push them out on social media and create some discussions on social media as well.
Great.
All right, so back to best practices. Oh, wait, go ahead, Jan. Did you need me?
I was going to say there is one question. What's the right way to address pay increases? Have you found one thing that seems to work with most companies?
So, no, not yet. We have some best practices that we can share today. But as far as addressing increases, we really recommend that that's a by-company thing, and we recommend that you put a task force together to address it. So is it based off of hitting metrics? Is it based off of a combination of hitting metrics and motivating others? A lot of companies are tying it into core values, metrics, and their ability to lead. So that's where people are leaning towards, exactly how they're doing it. I don't want to share anything because that might not work for you, but that'll give you a little guideline.
True.
All right.
True. Have you been seeing more companies leaning towards the bonus kinds of pay bump or using that for incentive?
Yeah, no, as far as bonuses tied to performance, not necessarily. That's pretty much the same. What we've been seeing a lot of bonuses tied to is tenure. Okay. So we're seeing sabbatical leaves paid for. We're seeing vacations paid for. We're seeing cash bonuses tied to the number of years of service. That has been on the rise. So, for example, if you've been with the company 20 years, you might get a 1-month sabbatical and a $20,000 bonus.
That's
and
great.
That's not unheard of.
Yeah, love hearing that.
Okay.
All right,
let's
go back.
Okay, thanks, Jan. All right, AGS. Let's talk about AGS. So what AGS has done is they're a really good example of how they motivate and have their culture in multiple offices. So we hear this a lot. We have multiple locations. We have multiple offices. What's the best way to engage my employees in multiple offices? So AGS has done something interesting. So they have surveyed all of their employees, and the common theme across all of their offices is that their culture tagline, they have a culture tagline, is "Let your inner nerd shine." And what they have found is that they're in the gaming industry, so they're in Vegas, and they do not only casino games, but they do gaming for the software gaming industry. The inner nerd is what makes them all great at gaming. So they made their culture tagline, "Let your inner nerd shine," and then they executed it in fun ways. Their boardrooms named the Death Star. Their Wi-Fi password is "May the Force be with you." They have Hero Day for all their community activities that they do. So they've tied it through their culture for all offices. What they've done unique that we haven't seen before, and not many businesses are doing, is they then took subcultures. So they have 2 Atlanta offices, and those Atlanta offices are treated different. So for example, their Midtown Atlanta office prefers collaborative work groups, and they don't like board meetings, but they love lunch meetings. Their Oklahoma office, they like pizza reward parties, so that's how they implement and engage that office. Their Vegas office likes wellness lunch and learns and fitness classes. So they have the personality of each office down to a science. So when they implement some sort of recognition or culture initiative, they take the main initiative and then they execute it differently for each of the offices. It's very cool. And then something else that they do is they use Skype and Office Vibe for daily polls and surveys. And they also have an internal, a lot of people use Yammer. They have an internal social media. It's like Facebook, but it's just for your company. And they use that. So they do a lot of really cool things. All right, Puma. Let's talk about Puma. So Puma, everyone knows Puma. They're a sports brand, very well known. They have 11,000 employees worldwide. Their average age is 36. So what they have done is they've created a culture where the mindset is, I own my job and I need to manage that. So they give their employees a lot of freedom to do their job in the way that they need to do it as long as it's getting done. And their average age is 36. So they created a culture where they customize for young families, because at 36 you have young families, and 2, off-site remote working and flex time. So that's how they're executing it. And some interesting things that they're doing. So if you do come into the office, it's designed for young families. So there's lactation rooms. They have Halloween parties, but it's for the kids. It's not for the adults. They have specially designed parent and child offices where the parent is on one side and the child, age-appropriate toys and games for the kids are available on the other side of that office suite. And they have multiple ones for that. And then some of their cool things that they do around the office caters to family-friendly. They have ice cream carts, hot chocolate bars, music connectivity. So if your teenager doesn't have school and they want to come to work with you, they can listen to music and have ice cream. And then they have an on-site gym. But the focus isn't on asking employees to be in the office, but it's for inspiring them for when they do come in. So that is Puma. All right, let's go to Stryker next. So Stryker is a medical technology company, and they're out of Texas. And they have several really cool things that they do that we wanted to share with you. So one of the things that they've done is they've joined the 100,000 Jobs Mission. That's a group committed to hiring 100,000 veterans by year 2020. So there's 180 other companies in this, and already over 200,000 veterans have been hired to date. We've seen in many of the cities that we do business in that hiring veterans is an untapped potential for talent, and the transition between the military and the workforce, there's some best practices there that people are working on, and it's becoming a nice job recruitment tool. Okay, so something else that they do, so Stryker also created a customized tool. It's an internal tool to chart their ideal career path for their employees. So each employee goes into their system across all divisions and business functions and geographies, and they make sure that there's a customized path for that person. Conversations are had on their career path, and that the employee is happy with what they're doing and they're not ready for the next move. So that is an internal tool that they work on. They've obviously invested a lot of money in it. They're a larger firm, but it's a great idea, and perhaps a smaller firm can do something similar in a different way. So like all of our best and brightest companies, there's all kinds of perks and fun things that they do. At this particular company, Stryker, they have a fitness center with towel service and shower service. dry cleaning service. A lot of our clients have that. Free snacks and drinks, and flu shots. We are seeing alcohol make a comeback to the workplace. I'm not saying Stryker serves alcohol. They probably don't, but we are seeing a lot of interesting shift in culture where alcohol is appreciated. There's one company that has a beer wagon that goes through at the end of the day, and if you hit your goal for that day, you get a beer delivered to your desk. Interesting stuff going on. Okay, so let's go to some more best practices rapid fire. These are the ones that I plow through, and then we'll pause again for questions, and then we'll go to our survey. So let's talk about Blue Plate. So Blue Plate is out of Chicago. This is a really good example of companies that do something, their occupation is then applied to their employees. So they're a catering company, and not only do they cater for their clients, but they make sure that their chefs prepare meals for all of their employees as well. If they're super busy and they can't provide meals that day for whatever reason, then they order food for their staff. So that's an interesting best practice. So think about your company. What products do you serve, and how can you reward your employees with those products? That beer example I just gave with the beer cart, they are a brewing company. So they make sure that they're rewarded with the beer for when they hit their goals. So this is a trend that we're also seeing. Okay, so out of Houston, we have a design and engineering firm, Dawson Van Orden, and they invite, so this is really interesting. So they have an on-site bar with pool and whatnot, and they invite their clients and their employees to watch a game, to hang out at the bar and play pool together. They play poker, they do darts and foosball, and it encourages a relaxing environment for client interaction. So this is the first time we've seen where an employee environment is then applied to the clients. So if you have a cool workspace, do you open it up so that your meetings that you host internally is a similar model that you would host for your clients externally? Something to think about. Okay, Host is out of San Diego. I really like this one. In fact, I think I'm going to borrow this. So their employees complete surveys that identifies their likes, their motivators, what keeps them up at night, and it does customize services and incentives for that employee. So they tailor impromptu moments. So the key is these are impromptu. So they provide recognition impromptu around each employee and what is meaningful to them based on how they answered that survey. So let's say somebody collects crowns. They like the royal family and they collect crowns. So the employer might then say, if they did a good job on something, or impromptu, they might pick up a crown and say, thank you for all your hard work. Here's a crown to add to your collection. So that's an example of what they might do there, so that it shows you really truly know your employees and you care about them. I thought that was interesting. Okay, so Secured Network is out of Boston. They provide IT networks and off-site hosting for their clients. They have multiple locations in the Boston area, and so what they do is on Fridays, they have free lunch on Fridays where all their employees from their various offices can come, and they chat about ideas. So somebody was asking about ideas. How do you incentivize ideas? Well, free food is one of the ideas here. They exchange ideas and give feedback to the managers and the executives in a very casual setting. Okay, back to Texas for a second here. So OcuSoft is in the eye care business for those that suffer from ocular diseases. So they host a hackathon where employees separate into small groups. They present ideas that would better help the company. So They get together, they hash out ideas, they do little brainstorming sessions, and then the leading ideas are voted on and win prizes. So these little work groups present ideas. Those ideas are hacked apart, and then it's decided which are the winning ideas to present. So those leading ideas that win prizes then go, the employee gets recognition for it. Most ideas are implemented, and that employee feels like they left an imprint on the company. So somebody had asked about this. This is a good example of maybe you want to have a hackathon. And you can theme the hackathons. We have a problem on such and such, and then they can go research and try and problem solve for that before the hackathon. And then the winners get formally recognized. Maybe you give them a plaque, maybe you give them a $100 gift card, whatever it may be. But that's an idea. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears here. So we analyzed the data year over year, and we have some new concerns as the data has come in. So for the most part, we've been hearing about the talent war, and the best and brightest companies have been doing some very creative and unique things to address the talent war. You've seen some of those in some of these best practices. What we're concerned about is the change in the data on the employee surveys year over year. And so we are now saying that the talent war is now an epidemic because it's reached the doorsteps of the best and brightest companies. So again, a 1-point difference, it gets our notice. 2 points, we're like, okay, we need to address this. And anything over at 3 points or above is a significant change. So these are the best and brightest companies in the nation, and anything tied to talent we examined. And there's certain questions and a theme of questions that have popped up that have had changes in their scoring. I'm going to share those with you. And then as I go through this, just think about, is this you? And if this is you, what are you going to do to address it? So if of the 450,000 employees, you have 100 employees, which of these issues would your employees also agree on? So let's start talking about this. So when asked, the employees say this organization is successful in recruiting quality candidates. That went down 3 points. That's significant. That's a significant decrease. So obviously this is related to talent war and recruiting. The process for hiring new employees is fair. That also went down 2 points. Now these last two things that I just mentioned to you, this organization is successful in recruiting, went down 3 points, and the process for hiring new employees is fair. These are very high scoring areas. So we're just noticing a change. They're still very high scoring areas. These companies are still best and brightest companies, but we rarely see this area change in the data. So the talent war is real, and it's hitting some of the best and brightest companies. Selection process and procedures identify the most qualified candidates for the job. That went down 2 points. This organization is successful in retaining top performers. That went down 2 points. Again, this was a very high scoring area, and we're just noticing that we need to pay attention to some of this data and what it's telling us. I am actively solicited for suggestions and ideas. That went down 2 points. The average tenure dropped year over year. That also went down 2 points. So we now have more turnover than we did last year at this time. This one baffles me. So as HR professionals, we have worked very, very hard to make sure that we have a seat at the C-suite table. And we've earned that right, and we're there. Again, I'm dating myself, but we're at the C-suite table. So we are at the worst talent epidemic in the history of this country, and there's a significant drop in the time that the CEOs are spending with their HR executives. And wouldn't you want to spend more time with your talent team if that was your number one concern for talent? So that's baffling to me. and it might be a sign of the economy and people are busy working on strategy instead of culture. So that is something that we need to all address. So let's pause here. We have a true or false question coming up, so we'll answer that and then I'll take some questions. So let's start with our little survey. True or false? You spend the time you need with your C-suite team to address talent and culture objectives.
So far, the true's winning, but we have a lot of false, too.
It's pretty even spread, it looks like.
Yeah.
All right, so that might be your takeaway, is how can you get more time with the C-suite? If they're busy and things are happening, how can you get their attention? Perhaps you do a video blog and you send it to your CEO once a week or once every 2 weeks. Perhaps you text your CEO and say, here's the top 3 issues, or you share with your CEO your tiny pulse survey of the month, or if you're not surveying your employees, maybe you can. So there's some creative ways to get your CEO's attention. Most CEOs, especially at the best and brightest companies, care incredibly about their employees, and they know the tie between profits and talent. So that's one case scenario. If you have a difficult C-suite team, how do you get their attention? You have to find their currency. So what is their currency? Is their currency the numbers dip? Or is their currency they don't want to get a phone call on bad customer service? You need to speak their language to get their attention. And I know we could probably do a workshop just on this, but we do need to get at that table, and they need to understand the tie between performance and profits. So those are a couple little ideas for you, but it sounds like we need to do some work here on spending more time with the C-suite. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO. It could be the chief operating officer, anybody that you need to be an advocate for your case and your cause.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, we have a couple of comments. A couple of comments here. First of all, I love this one. Sick kids shouldn't come to the office. In the case of Puma, they wonder how often do people use those parent-child offices. Seems like it would distract from work. But to me, that also ties into virtual workforces. And there are so many of those up and coming around lately when companies employ people all over the globe. So then let's
chat about that. Yeah, so addressing Puma directly, they have a young workforce. So it fits their culture to have noise and a little bit of chaos in their office. Saying that, the workspaces for the children are their own workspaces. They're not overlapping with any other work areas, and the noise of that is not troublesome to them. So that's not an issue for them. There are many office environments where kids are not appropriate, so you would need to make sure that you customize any of these for your office. I agree, don't bring the sick kids in. This wasn't designed for sick kids. This was designed for kids that are younger than school age. So they're not going to daycare, they're not going to kindergarten, that kind of thing.
So here's something cute. Somebody asked, are there any best practices for completely virtual workforces where everybody works from home? And then somebody wrote that their company does a virtual happy hour where remote employees get together in a Google Hangout one Friday a month, and there's even music piped in so they can all hang out together and talk and have a drink.
That's very
cool. Any
So
others
they created their own Skype environment to engage virtual employees. And there is software. There is software that can make virtual employees feel like they're in the office, where you have, what's it called, that one movie with the blue people? Oh, my gosh. Avatar. You create an avatar for yourself, and it's connected to your phone or to your computer, and that's how you interact with the office. So there's some really good ideas there. What else you got, Jan?
Well, and this one is it's a question really for the Best and Brightest program itself. Is there a component of diversity and inclusion in best practices in Best and Brightest companies?
Yes, we score for, that's one of our scoring areas, and we do have best practices for that. I can give one real quick that I like. There's one company, their name's escaping me right now, but what they do is they do every other week, they get their employees together. Their employees bring a food item from their culture, and they share the food, but before they share food, they pack up 200 lunches for their local homeless shelter. So the local homeless shelter is getting really good quality food, ethnic food, and then they get to share a little bit of their culture with their employees, with their fellow employees. All right, I'm going to keep moving on here. Okay. Okay, so fade on. This one, so one of the things I said is how pay increases are administered is a problem. I really like this example. It's much easier in a sales environment. This is for their sales team. But as I describe this to you, how can you apply this to a non-sales environment? So at Fade On, they're in Boston, they have a high reward culture, and their sales team can earn uncapped commission. So employees have the ability to increase their salary multiple times a year, and salary increases operate outside of formal promotions, offering employees a direct chance to increase their compensation. So there's clear targets for promotion with no set time limit, meaning that there's no ceiling on any employee's progression. And then employees can receive multiple promotions a year. And positions are also being created for employees rather than having them wait for something to open. So doesn't this solve the issue of how pay increases are administered? There's very set criteria. If you hit this benchmark, your pay goes up. If you hit this benchmark, you get a promotion. And those are separate of each other. And it's very clear what the expectations are. I love that. I wish more companies could apply that to a non-sales environment. One more here, San Diego AMN. They have an internal recognition program that's around service. One of their ideas is really focused on service. They have a super service hero, an innovation initiative, teamwork titan, and a trust and respect maverick. So these are awards that people are nominated for, and they can earn coins, and then coins can be turned in for prizes, including gift cards and free lunch and things like that. But what's beautiful about this is they tied their service culture and what's important to them as a business into their internal recognition program. We're seeing a lot of that. And then they also have the VIP awards, which is values in practice, and then those folks are honored at their company meeting. So a few more rapid fires here, and then we're going to ask our final questions. So Harley Ellis Devereaux, HED, they have summer hours between May and October, and they can either take a full day off every 2 weeks, or they can take a half day each week. Not bad. HVJ in North Texas, they provide executive coaching to their senior leaders, but they also provide mentoring to all of their employees. AccuRounds is they do accuracy machining, precision machining, so that's a very intense job. So what they do is they provide indoor and outdoor walking paths, and they allow people to take and modify their work schedule so that they can exercise during the day, before the day, or whenever convenient to them, because it would be a good mental health break for them. Lamico, they're an insurance company, and all employees are allowed flex time, and actually 10% of their workforce is 100% virtual. And they offer the ability to get talent from anywhere. So that's their philosophy. Is they want talent that's good quality talent. They don't care where it comes from, and they'll accommodate them virtually. Okay. So these are the things that this is your homework assignment, so to speak. These are the areas that we want you to focus on. Leadership, trust, transparency, and listening. Make sure your senior leaders are listening more. Find vehicles to provide that information to them so they can listen to all the employees' needs, but they need to also communicate more related to transparency. CEOs think they're communicating, senior leaders think they're communicating, but they're not communicating enough. It's like you almost need to be your own little marketing campaign to get the message across. And then immediate supervisor needs training and education. We really highly recommend that you give them the tools that they need to coach and motivate employees and give them the necessary feedback that they need in order to do their job. So we talked about salary increases a lot. Let's find a new way to do that, not tied to a performance review. We recommend you audit your recruitment practices. Remember we talked about radio flyer. Let's see what you can do to come up with your own customized recruitment process that finds the right talent for you. And make sure you're creating a pipeline. Are you partnered up with local colleges? Are you partnered up with high schools? Do you have an internship program? If you do not have a pipeline for talent and have people ready to go, then you are behind the curveball. Review your hiring process. Are you getting the best talent? Is it fair and consistent? Your employees are saying it's not. So maybe it's time to change it up a bit and look at how you're doing. And then, of course, the retention numbers dipped slightly. Are you keeping your top performers? If you have not had solid conversations with them and ongoing conversations with them, you're missing the mark, and that's what I recommend. So take one of these and make sure you implement them. So let's go to this. Let's go to our final question here. What was today's takeaway of everything that we shared today, of all of our suggestions and all the feedback that we have from all this data? What is your takeaway? What would you like to implement, or what aha moment did you have? And let's just wait for those answers to come in.
Jennifer, while we're waiting, we had a question. Are there employee development evaluations within the Best and Brightest program? So in other words, do people do companies provide their employee development opportunities, and are those ranked and graded?
Employee development. So their training programs, yes, we do score on that. And if you go to our website, thebestandbrightest.com, you can not only see our best practices resource guide. We publish these in a journal. You can download that. But you can also see the 10 areas that we score on, and that is absolutely one that we do score on. Okay, so what are some of the takeaways, Jan?
Talent war epidemic, great practices. Would love to hear more. Salary increases not tied to performance. Talent pipeline. Love the idea about hackathons. Virtual happy hour. Customizing recognition for the employee. Culture can mean the food and the donation idea. Wants more information on Stryker's process for career mapping. And glad to hear we're not the only ones struggling.
Oh, gosh, we're all in this together. So anybody that wanted more information, Jan, can you get their emails, and I will email them and see what I can do to help them. And then thank you, everyone. And I appreciate your time today. We will be doing another one of these best practice webinars in the future. And then we have a whole schedule of future webinars coming up on a variety of topics related to being a best and brightest employer. So I want to thank everyone. Again, if you want more information or more ideas, you can go to the bestandbrightest.com website under the Education tab. Click on the Best Practices Resource Guide, and it'll be right there for you. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time, and go out there and make something happen. Thank you.
And I'll also say, too, that on June 20th, we have 4 of the elite winning companies providing some of their best practices. So tune into that one, and you'll be getting more information on that in your email. So again, I will be sending out a SurveyMonkey evaluation for you to provide your name and email, and we will provide a certificate with the codes for continuing education credit. With that will be sign-ups for the next webinars. So thank you, Jennifer. Very, very intelligent presentation that all of us can use for the future. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude the webinar for today, and we do thank you for your participation.